Good evening, good October evening, good autumn evening to everyone, and thank you for being here tonight for our first King Tide program of the 2021-22 King Tide season. This is the first of a number of King Tide webinars that we will be holding throughout the next few months. Our next one falls on November 3rd, Wednesday. Then there will be another one on November 6th. And what I'm talking about right now, for those of you coming into the room, I'm talking about the webinars. We'll be talking about the King Tide dates themselves, the actual dates of the highest tides of the year in a moment. But right now, I'm just letting you know a few of the other events that are coming up, and we can talk about those later on this evening. So November 3rd, next week, Wednesday, I am very excited to welcome Marina Saros, who will be talking about King Tides kind of internationally, but she actually started King Tides project on the West Coast. She's awesome, and if you haven't signed up for her talk next week on Wednesday, please do so. More information on that later. November 6th, we will be with the Cape Perpetua Collaborative. I'll be talking about King Tides on the Central Coast. November 16th, Peter Ruggiero will be joining us. We are doing a program with the Lincoln City Audubon. And then December 14th, I will be speaking to the Shoreline Education for Awareness and talking about King Tides on the South Coast. So, welcome to those of you who have not been to a CoastWatch or Oregon Shores webinar. My name is Jessie Jones, and I am the CoastWatch Volunteer Coordinator. We are a partner with the Oregon Coast Management Program, bringing you the King Tides programming. Very quickly, I work for Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition, and we celebrate that the Oregon coast is for the people. Oregon Shores is celebrating our 50th year this year. You can check out more about what Oregon Shores does at oregonshores.org. So my program is the CoastWatch program, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for that program. It's a mile-by-mile beach adoption program. You adopt a mile of the Oregon coast, you do some observations, send those into our website, and then it becomes a sort of open door to a number of other citizen science projects. Once you join CoastWatch, I will introduce you to a suite of partners and other citizen science projects that you can become involved in. For example, the NOAA Marine Debris Program, the Coastal Observation and Seabird Survey Team, Beached Bird Program. There's a beach grass hunt happening this year as well, and a number of other programs. So check it out. Here again, next week, Wednesday, November 3rd, King Tides in Your Neighborhood, Imagining the Oregon Coast of the Future with Marina. So our upcoming King Tides, November 5th through the 7th, December 3rd through the 5th, and January 1st through the 3rd. All right, so tonight, I wanted to say that in the background, we have Tabea Goosen helping out. She is a CoastWatch volunteer and volunteer with Audubon as well, and she's helping us in the background. So she might be answering some of your questions as we have a pretty large crowd this evening. And I would also like to welcome Kristin Bayans, who is joining us from the Cape Falcon, from the Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. Hi, Kristin. And she is going to be doing a presentation after I talk to you about the King Tides, but you can stay on with me right now, Kristin. That would be awesome. I'm going to be just talking about the Oregon King Tides program, the history of the program. I'm going to be talking with you about the Oregon Coast Management Program, and I'll be giving a background of that. We'll be looking back at the most recent season of the Oregon King Tides Project. I'll be heading into their website, showing you some photographs. We'll be talking about how king tides can be useful in thinking about climate change impacts on the Oregon coast. And we've got the dates of the king tides. And then I just wanted to remind folks as well, if you would like to get on that website, but I will be visiting that, is the OregonKingTides.net. All right. So this is the time of year that we are reminded that the true force of the sea, a sea that does not hold back and gets closer every year. In addition to encouraging participation in the Oregon King Tides Project, the best message that CoastWatch can send and our partners can send is to stay off the beach when the tide is high during the king tides. So what I have here is one of the best websites for the tide tables. And so you can go here, and the high tides during the king tides, that high tide point is going to vary all up and down the coast. And so, for example, on November 5th, the high tide will be at 1:54 p.m. on November 5th in Seaside. In Bandon, the high tide is going to be 1:16 p.m. on November 6th. And at the mouth of the Siltcoos River, the high tide on November 7th is 12:33 p.m. So check your area. And also, this is an opportunity to let you all know that you should always check the tides before you head to the beach, because we have 2 high tides every day of the year. Some of those tides are during the day, some of them are at night. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Okay, so I think at this point, I'm going to turn off my camera and just continue on with the show. See, yes, so I see that there may be some echo with some of you, there's not with others, so I apologize if there is. Maybe you can do a little bit of audio adjusting. And if you would like to answer or ask questions, you can put that in the chat. You can also put that in the Q&A. And you can also raise your hand. We are going to try to save questions until the very end. But if you have a question and you don't want to forget what your question is, just go ahead and stick that in the chat or the Q&A. All right. So the Oregon King Tides Project is a citizen science project that relies on volunteers to photograph the highest tides of the winter season. The reason? Because it helps track sea level rise on the Oregon coast and envision how it will impact coastal areas now and into the future. So there are a number of images and graphics that you can look on the web to help explain why we have these high tides of the year. This is one of my favorite ones. So the king tides are naturally occurring tides, and they happen when the moon, the sun, and the earth are in alignment with each other. And when the moon is in its closest part of it to the orbit to the earth, and when the earth is at its closest alignment to the sun. And that creates the highest gravitational pull on the tides. They occur in the summer too. But the reason why we focus on king tides and photographing them in the winter is for 2 reasons. One, in the summertime, the highest occurs at night, so it's not convenient for photos. And 2, the big water events and storms happen more in the winter. Therefore, the tides are more impactful to Oregon coastal communities in the winter. So here's one of the photographs from the Oregon King Tides Project. And this is an interesting example. This one, it was not included whether or not this was a regular high tide on the bottom. It's definitely a king tide on the top. And then we have just another tide at the bottom, but it's a beautiful example of the difference between the tides that we have in Oregon. One of the things that we like to get for the King Tides Project are comparison photos. And the comparison photo is a a king tide photo, and then a regular high tide photo. So throughout this presentation, I am going to, and Kristin will as well, emphasize that staying off the beach during the king tides is important. And we are not advocating that anyone do that. We want to take your photographs from a safe place. And one of the ways to do that is to do a little bit of recon before you head to your site at the date of the king tide. Head out there during a low tide, head out there safely during a regular king tide. Regular high tides can be dangerous as well. We just had one. We just had a little bit of a storm surge, well, somewhat of a bigger storm surge. So king tides are the projected highest tides of the year. But we can have some very high king tides at other dates that aren't necessarily on our king tide calendar. That's why it's important to know your tides. Keep a tide calendar with you at all time. Download one on your phone, print one out, grab one at one of those little markets. A lot of times they're in bait shops, and take your highlighter and highlight where the highest tides of the year are, where the highest tides of the month are. You can tell your friends, your family, and any visitors that you even encounter on the beach that a high tide is coming. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Oregon Coast Management Program. They are a networked program and a federally approved coastal program that's administered by NOAA for all states and territories throughout the US, and it's voluntary. It gives states money from the federal government to do coastal management, and the states are allowed to do coastal management in a way that fits their state best. Oregon became a federally approved coastal management program pretty early. Oregon's coastal zone is watershed based from the crest of the Coast Range and extends 3 nautical miles, a lot bigger than other coastal seats. All cities and counties within this zone must comply with the coastal program, which is administered through the Department of Land Conservation and Development, which is Oregon's land use planning agency. We have 19 planning goals that all cities and counties must comply with. The last are coastal goals focused on coastal resources. So these are estuaries, shorelands, beaches and dunes, and the ocean. And these serve as the foundation for our coastal management program. In addition to cities and counties, all state agencies that have regulatory authority within the coastal zone must also comply. So this includes Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, DSL, Oregon State Parks and Rec, and others. It's a bottom-up network program, and all agencies and entities must work together. So Meg Reed is the coastal shores specialist at the Oregon Coast Management Program, and she often also gives these presentations. So her and I work together to bring you this seasonal outreach for the King Tides program. And then other partners in the project are Surfrider, Watershed Councils, Oregon Coast Visitors Association, and Lighthawk. And you can check out the aerial photos from Lighthawk on Flickr, and we will talk about that in a little bit. So we're celebrating 12 seasons. That's exciting. This program started in 2010 with 82 photos and 10 participants. And now we are up to 450 photos, although there are a lot more than that on Flickr, and just hundreds of participants as well. And this is a screenshot from the Oregon King Tides photo page, which we will celebrate and look at very soon. So this is a great example of what we're looking for in terms of photos. Good examples show the water level next to recognizable landmark features like fences, benches, trash cans, docks, flooding coming into parks and parking lots, and pathways along rivers, estuaries, even pathways along the beach. So this is interesting, and I wanted to bring this up. This is some graphs and information from Peter Ruggiero and then through Meg. And these were actually, this is from January of 2020. And they're from the Rockaway Beach January King Tide series in 2020. So remember that these high tides in the winter can occur during other events. For example, the top red graph is regular high tides over roughly 2 weeks, oscillating over time, too high and too low a day. The green is water runoff, how far up the beach the water goes. And the blue is total water level. All of the pieces of data combined. You can see on January 11th, the high tide and water runoff are high at the same time. So the total water level was over 5 feet higher than it was on the 10th or the 12th. So that's the day before or the day after. The day was super high water levels during the king tide series. It was incredibly impactful, a very intense day. This particular type of event only happened 10 other times since 1980 in the Rockaway Beach area. The graph goes back to 1980 when we first started getting king tide data. You can see that here, very high. And I want to show you a video of that. So this is in Rockaway 2020. Do that one more time so you can see it. So here is another example of a great king tide photograph. This is actually at the turnaround at Nye Beach. All right. So this is an example of how the King Tide Project, the Oregon King Tide Project, can use data to actually create mapping. So you can see here, A, there's a stop sign there, and B, there's like the corner of a curb here. This is taken from Nehalem. And then in the third photograph in the right, you can sort of see this blue area here. And that is a map. And then you can see these yellow lines here. They're very, very faint here, here, and here. So the expected high tides every 2 years are within these yellow areas. So what can king tide photos show us about the effects of climate change on the Oregon coast? So sea level rise will make high tides higher. Flooding and erosion will become more frequent. Rising sea surface temperatures increase wind speed and precipitation during storm events. Sea level rise impacts width of the shore. A narrowing of the public beach happens. Recreation on the beach can be lost, and a shrinking shoreline is reality. And we are already seeing this in some areas of the coast. Saltwater intrusion into estuaries impacts groundwater, transforming coastal habitats and the plants and animals living there as well. So I'd like to very much welcome Kristin, who will be presenting and who is the new coordinator for the Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you. All right.
And it seems you are muted.
Oh, I'm muted? I'm unmuted on my screen.
There we go.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yes, I can. I think that was actually my fault.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna
All
go
right.
ahead. I'm gonna go
Take
ahead
it
and share
away,
my
Kristin.
screen. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to spend time with us this evening. My name is Kristin Bayans, and I am the program coordinator for the Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. And I am part of this presentation because the Friends of Cape Falcon are partnering with the Oregon King Tides Project and Oregon Shores to do a community science project around this idea of photographing the king tides. And we've participated in this project for a number of years, but this year we wanted to put some more kind of curbs to the process so we can get a little bit more robust data to help us understand these changes over time. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't share a little bit about Oregon's marine reserves. So Oregon has 5 marine reserves, And Cape Falcon is the northernly-most reserve. You can see here at the top of your screen. I'm circling it with my cursor now. We are located roughly between Cannon Beach and Manzanita, and I'll go into more of that in a second. The 5 marine reserves are overseen by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and you can think of them similar to a state park or a national park in that they are areas that have been set aside for preservation. In addition to that, they are areas that allow us to do scientific research, formal scientific research, also community science projects that help to inform that formal work. And importantly, they also are areas that help to preserve biodiversity and habitat in these spaces. Marine reserves have 2 separate designations. One is the kind of larger title of Marine Reserve, or MR, and you see on parentheses in the screen. That designation means that there's no take. You can't extract anything from the ocean in these spaces. So you can't have any kelp or shellfish or fish or any marine mammals or birds. All of the good stuff that lives there needs to stay there. In addition to that, there's no development whatsoever in this space. Now, generally, sandwiching or butting up against these marine reserves or MR designations, you have marine protected areas. And these marine protected areas are slightly different in that there's some take allowed, and that is dependent upon each of the spaces and the regulations that go with them. So there's the designation with the marine protected area and the take allowed is similar to how each of the marine reserves have their own identity. So all of the marine reserves are a different size or shape and have different types of critters that you can find in them, and they look different. And that's similar to how the designations in the MPAs are aligned as well. So if you want to know a certain reserve that's not Cape Falcon, you would go to the ODF website and look up information about what you can take from that particular area. Also, when this designation, there's no development. So again, no ocean development. Now I know that I have said no multiple times in the past couple of minutes, but there are amazing things that you can also do in these places. Like a national park or a state park, you can recreate and it's encouraged. Come to the beach, walk down the beach, go hiking, go kayaking, go surfing, go snorkeling, go swimming, go tide pooling. We have an amazing tide pool ambassador program that we launched last year. So we definitely want you to come and enjoy the beauty of these spaces as well. Now, Cape Falcon, I'll talk a little bit more about. Cape Falcon itself has a 20 square mile section between Arch Cape to the north and Manzanita to the south. We are the youngest of the reserves. The reserve's anniversary, 10-year anniversary, is coming up very soon. The earliest reserve was established in 2012, and we had restrictions started with our site in 2016. The Cape Falcon Marine Reserve has 2 MPAs, one that is in the ocean itself, in the ocean proper, which is around 3 nautical miles out, and then 1 shoreside. The types of take that are allowed in these MPAs are listed on the screen. So the West MPA, or the one in the ocean, you can only take salmon by troll, and you can crab. One of the cool things about Cape Falcon is we have a soft-bodied habitat. It's a lot of sandy areas, so it's rife for critters like crabs. The shoreside MPA only allows fishing, angling there at the lowest low tide. Now, all of these spaces, these marine reserves, these 5 wonderful marine reserves, are helped out. ODF is helped out. ODF is the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they're the ones that oversee the research and the maintaining of these spaces, these reserves. But groups like the Friends of Cape Falcon help to educate the public about these habitats. So the Friends of Cape Falcon is a constellation of nonprofit environmental organizations and citizens who help to educate and engage people like you and me, when I wasn't hired to be the coordinator. So just everyday folk and visitors to these spaces about conservation and the research that's taking place right underneath our noses. And through that, the hope is that we establish a personal connection and foster a nurturing relationship with these wonderful spaces so they can continue on long after we're no longer here. So just quickly, some of the partners in the Friends of Cape Falcon. Our fiscal sponsor is the Lower Nehalem Community Trust. We do a lot of projects with Portland Audubon, Surfrider, Friends of Haystack Rock, Nature Conservancy, North Coast Land Conservancy, and the Coast Range Association. Okay, so what about the King Tides project as it relates to Cape Falcon? So we have 4 goals that we would like to wrap around this project. And we want in this space that we share with the public and share with you, we want to establish these photo locations, and we want to receive photos from categories that are official King Tide categories that have been established through other King Tide projects and help to create a more neat package around the data that we're getting. We'd love to receive before and after comparison photos, as Jesse was talking about earlier. And we also want to have you participate through us. You don't have to sign up as a volunteer or participate through Cape Falcon to do this project, but we would love to have that happen. And these 4 things are also associated with personal safety. Number 1 for us is we want you to be careful when you're out there. You already saw some pretty gnarly videos about the reach of these tides, but this is a community science project, and we want you to have a good time, but we also want you to be mindful of how awesome nature can be and how it can change on a dime. So just be careful. Okay. So the next 2 slides are going to be about locations that we are interested in having data pulled from. These locations listed on my screen are moved from north to south, and they're related to the map. So there are teardrop shapes here on the map that I'm pointing out with my cursor right now. These relate to the 4 locations going from north to south on the list. So the locations are 2 residential areas, Cove Beach and Falcon Cove. These locations are more difficult to get to, and we do not encourage a lot of folks to go down there because, 1, it is a residential space, but also it's a little bit precarious to get to. The 3rd location is here, which is probably the most popular location, one of the most popular beaches in Oregon, and is definitely the most popular spot within the reserve at Short Sands Beach in Oswald West State Park. And then lastly, rounding out the group is the Neahkani Beach access, and that is at the furthest end of the Marine Reserve. The neighborhood locations that we are interested in pulling data from are communities that abut the reserve. So Seaside and Cannon Beach and Manzita and Nehalem, again, moving north to south with these locations. The suggested spots like the Neahkaniseum River Bridge on Highway 101 outside of Seaside, the Acola Creek Bridge in Cannon Beach, and so on. Those are suggestions. You do not have to visit these locations. Jesse will pull up the Oregon King Tides website in a bit, and you will be able to see there are other priority locations in and around these neighborhood areas. These are just some suggestions. Again, any of the 8 locations that I just 4 from Cape Falcon within the reserve proper, and then these 4, we want you to make sure that you've scouted them in advance. If you are not necessarily from this area, you're maybe joining us from Portland or Eugene or wherever you may be. You may be in Alaska, I don't know, and you want to come down to Oregon. Make sure that you are familiar with these spots before you go. The King Tides are definitely it can be a hairy event, And some of these locations, like the Neocanisium River Bridge, are on a highway, and it's slightly dangerous to observe things from that location. The next slide is talking about another goal that we have. So the first goal I mentioned was photo locations. So I just shared with you 8 photo locations. Number 2 is to get photos from those specific categories. And this is a screenshot from the Oregon King Tide's Flickr page. And it has on the bottom here 5 different boxes, and they are the categories with which we're interested in gaining information from. So I'll read them out quickly. Service infrastructure, access points, roads, highways, and bridges, residential neighborhoods, parks and pathways. Now, not all of these are going to be applicable to locations inside of the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. They're more going to be, the breadth of these categories are probably going to be more applicable to areas, the neighboring areas that we mentioned earlier. I'm going to go through very quickly some examples of what I am looking for, or what we're looking for this community science project. The photo categories, again, I'll go over, but this is an example of an image from within the reserve taken during a King Tide event. And it is an example of the photo category parks and pathways. So I've taken a screenshot from Google, an aerial view of Short Sand Creek, which is the mouth of the beach access to Short Sands, Short Sand Beach, which is smack dab in the middle of the reserve itself, the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve. Now, this also is a great example of, hey, we would love comparison photos, because I'm showing you in this presentation an aerial view taken at a different time, and it's showing a tide that is a low tide and not necessarily a normal high tide. So again, we're looking for comparison photos from the same site, generally from the same view, and also at a normal high tide. So that is what a before picture would be. And this is the category of park and pathways, because this is the pathway into the Short Sands Beach access. This after photo is of a King Tide. And I also want to point out in this after photo, this person is extremely close. I'm not recommending that you get this close to the water. And we'll point out to you too that this area where I'm moving my cursor about, this is the beach access. Beyond here, where you see the wave cresting, the area between the wave cresting and this rock pile that I'm circling with my cursor now, that is a drop off. That right there is a rocky pathway that you take down into the beach, and the beach opens up from there. And it's about 8, 9 feet down. So the waves have come all the way in up to the mouth of the river. So again, scout your locations and be at a high vantage point. Don't necessarily get this close to the space. Another example of a category that would be helpful for Cape Falcon Marine Reserve photographs is it's an access point. Now, what's the difference between a pathway and an access point? Well, the photo that I just showed you could also be for this category as well, this access category as well. So this is a photograph, 2 comparison photographs from Falcon Cove at the northern end of the reserve. The before photo is at a high tide, a normal high tide, and you can see that although not taken at the same exact spot, the same building is in the reference. I'm circling it here, and you can see it on the opposite side of my screen in the after photo. And the Falcon Cove area is experiencing extreme erosion from these high tide events and extreme high tide events. And so you can see here, all of this is due to erosion. And this has happened over 20 years. This whole entire beach has changed its facial features completely. Now back up here where you have the red arrow pointing, that is this pathway. And the pathway has completely been wiped out. There was a set of stairs there that are completely wiped out from these king tides. So this is a better example of a comparison shot. And also this person is standing pretty far back from the high tide event. Another category that would be helpful, but not necessarily for the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve area, but more so for our neighborhood examples. This is a picture before and after from downtown Nehalem. And as you can see, the streets become completely flooded. But this is a good example, even though it's not the same angle, you have about the same eye level and also the same intersection that is being demonstrated here. And this would be for roads, highways, and parking lots, that category. So those are some 3 categories that you could utilize for capturing photographs for this project. Now, I know we keep hitting it home, but I'm gonna nail this down a little bit too. Please consider your own safety before going. There is more safety information that is available on the State Parks website. I have that listed on the screen. The Oregon King Tides Project website also has safety tips. I'm going to show you this 19-second clip of a king tide event that happened last year at Cannon Beach. And it's everything you don't want to do when you are going out to experience this awesome weather. So those folks were extremely lucky. And I will just mention briefly that, you know, I doubt that they check the weather. So know your weather conditions before you go. Definitely check the site beforehand. This site that was in the video is a normal beach access to Cannon Beach. And that water has come all the way up to past that beach access. And it is surrounding some of the buildings that are closer to that access point. So even though it's a known space, they are way too close. They should have been much further back. So check the site beforehand, check those tide tables before you go. Make sure you are staying high. Don't get on the beach. Never turn your back from the ocean, and always be aware of your surroundings. They got surprised and were definitely not aware of their surroundings. And as they're running away, they're running towards flotsam and jetsam that are all over in the foreground. So there are logs and things that are in their way, which could have been even more dangerous for them. So stay behind those fences and barricades, stay off jetties, logs, and rocks. Use your best judgment. That's extremely important in these situations. Oops, sorry, I don't want to show that to you again. It's not a nice thing to see twice. The last thing I want to say is that if you want to participate in this event through Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, please shoot me an email. My email is capefalconmr@gmail.com. And when you shoot me an email, let me know that you want to be a King Tides volunteer. And I will email you back and we'll have a chat about which tide series you're interested in pursuing photographs for. So we have tide series that are coming up in November, December, and January. And then we can also talk about which location you'd like to go to. And part of this is helping to maintain the number of people who are at these locations, because we don't want to get these locations inundated and make that even more of a hairy situation for folks to get into. I would love it if you volunteered through us. It would be wonderful to kind of kick off my first volunteer project as the new project coordinator with a hearty start. So shoot me an email. And in addition to that information, I would like to say even if you don't want to participate in the project through us, please do keep us in mind. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Cape Falcon MR. If you want to learn more about the marine reserves and their 10-year history and more about how they came to be, please check out the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife's Marine Reserves website, OregonMarineReserves.com. And if you want to know more about us and participate in our projects or get our newsletter, you can go to our website, nehalemtrust.org/Cape Falcon. And apart from this information, I do want to tell you that we have some cool events that are coming up. This Saturday, October 30th, we have a costume-themed beach cleanup with some of our friends, partners, and other partners. So Surfrider, Oregon Trail Keepers, and Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. We're all going to be out there with our sea-themed costumes on, cleaning up the beach, doing some stewardship within the reserve. You can find that on our website. And then we also have an amazing talk on blue carbon, and that is coming up in November with a speaker series online. And with that, I just encourage you to stay in touch, and I'll turn it back over to Jessie. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kristin. That was great. So OregonKingTides.net. This is the project page. Now, in the past, we were working a lot with the Flickr page. We have that in the background, but there have been a lot of updates made to this page, which are excellent. And so this is where you would go to find out how to participate. I wanted to mention that last year we had a photo contest, and we're going to be doing that photo contest again. Now, how do you enter that photo contest? Well, all you have to do is submit photos, and then we have some judges, and then we choose them that way. So if you participate and submit photos, you are entered into the contest. All right, so how do you submit your photos? You would go, we'll do this again, go into participate and go into submit. And then you'll see here, there's a photo submission fillable form here. You can see here, yes. And if you would like to be in the contest, yes or no. Please enter your name if you would like credit. And then you would simply click here, and then it will go to your computer, to your image files on your computer, and you simply upload it. Now, here is a pretty awesome feature here. You can actually choose where your photo is on this map, where your photo is from. And so you can, get around on here and actually choose a location, and then it fills in the lat and long there. Can you all see that? See, I just automatically, it filled it in, 44.644, -124 right there. And then it's going to change when I go on the map. So you can find your location for the most part, and where you are on the Oregon coast, and just click that. And you can also do a search. And then you're going to zoom in. I also had somebody ask questions about estuaries and bays. Yes, please. What I did last year was I went up some of the tidal rivers. I live in Astoria, and I photographed some of the tidal rivers here. So the Lewis and Clark River, also known as the Natul River. And then on Young's Bay as well. So here's the Nakanicum River estuary. So if you take a photo here, there you have your lat long. All right. And if we have questions now, we have been answering them as we go. So please, if you do have a question, please ask. Here is the photo gallery. This is a wonderful resource for learning and for seeing different photos from around the state. So we have comparison photos here. We have some of our favorite photos here. And then some of the current season here, which hasn't quite started yet. So this is going to change in the next couple of weeks. So you can see here, this is one that I used tonight in my presentation. This was taken in October of 2020, so a year ago. Now, another thing that you can see here is a map on the right side. If you zoom into this map, you can see all the locations where there are photos. This is another way to see. And I just want to give some kudos to the team at the Oregon Coast Management Program, who have just been working over the years to make this website better and better and better. So we're going to go into this dot here, and you can see it's just incredible. So this is also a great way to see where there are photos needed as well. And sometimes you can actually see who took the photos. But a lot of times, so there's still some work on that, like who took the photos and where they are, but almost all of them that have been sent to us are on this map here. Here's another example here. Go into Glen Eden Beach. Okay. Wanted to also show you, I mentioned this earlier, there's a partnership with Lighthawk, and Meg and some others, I know Brianna Goodwin and Rena Olson have all flown around and been able to take photos of the high tide events around the state. So please check that out. And you can see here, there's not a title here yet. So it's important to get those in there. And then events. So upcoming events every year, those will be here. And then there's more information here about what a king tide is if you wanted to look more about that, the project purpose, and back to home.